joining us. I hope, fingers crossed. Jeff Morin, are you here? Hello. Okay, it says connecting. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, we did it.
Namaste, baby. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry for the delay there. I seem to have these problems when I get on the technology. So,
No, no problem at all. I mean, it's all very iffy, and people can see how the sausage is made. On television, we kind of had to fake that a little bit and go to commercial break. But here, you're kind of out there and vulnerable for everyone to see when things aren't working. But it's all good. Jeff, I introduced you earlier, but why don't you tell everyone who's watching a little bit about yourself and how you got into meditation and what you're going to teach us today?
sure. Well, I started as a journalist. So I was working for the CBC back in the day. And I was a producer on the radio, and I left to write a book about consciousness. So I was super into learning about how the mind worked, more from, I guess, from a neuroscience perspective at that point, although I was also interested in the experience, the sort of landscape of the mind as we experienced it. So through that, working on that book, I got interested in meditation. I heard this is where you really got to go if you want to understand how the mind works. You got to get with the old school Buddhists and hang out with the monks. So
Yeah.
I did that, and it kind of changed my life. It started out more as an academic interest or journalistic interest, like, okay, I'm going to learn about how this works and report on that. But through the activity of practicing, of course, you start to realize that how crazy and neurotic you are. And I started to get a handle on how to work with my own challenges, and I just got hooked. And after that, I just kind of did as much meditation as I could and as many modalities, and eventually ended up teaching it unexpectedly.
Well, and you've written, I know that you're co-author of the New York Times bestselling Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, and I definitely fall into that category. You're also the author of The Head Trip, which is a travel guide to sleeping, dreaming, and waking. By the way, just before we meditate, a lot of people are having weird ass dreams right now,
Totally,
Jeff.
yeah.
I mean, really crazy dreams. And I dreamed the other night that my whole head got eaten by a tiger, which I blame on Tiger King partially. But tell us why people are having such funky, crazy dreams.
Well, I couldn't say for sure, but my guess would be just the heightened intensity of the moment. It feeds back into our nightlife, just like it's in our day life. So people imagine there's this clean separation between the two, but there's really just a sort of single continuum of consciousness. So if you're more anxious and more preoccupied during the day, some of that is going to affect your dreams. So it wouldn't be uncommon to imagine there'd be more vivid dreams, more anxious dreams. And it may also be, well, I don't know. I wouldn't want to speculate, but you sometimes there's this expression in social science, social contagion, the way in which humans affect each other, that we kind of feel each other's vibes, you could say. And it's probably, and I think you can talk about that in a pretty straight up way, like it just has to do with people's body language and things like that. But there's a lot of this extra charged feeling in the air. So maybe the fact that we're all part of a shared story is creating a kind of heightened intensity as well. That is something that's related in some way, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people
I've
have
been
been
having weird
reading
dreams
about
too.
I've been reading about it and hearing about it. A lot of people are talking about it. Somebody just asked that how do you get your kids into meditation?
I think you make it playful. You try to just show them that it's sort of like you make a game of it. Like, can you be as still as a ninja? How would a ninja move? You make it really smooth. I mean, you can kind of unbundle meditation and teach just like the skills of meditation to a kid, and kids are into it if you make it a game. You could also weave in the imagination too, so you pace the actual practice in a kind of story. So you're telling them a story about they're walking really quietly through a jungle. They don't want to make any noise, or so you can basically teach the skills in a more storytelling, imaginative way, I would say.
Well, I think a lot of people want to start doing this. So why don't you show us? I know this is going to be a 15-minute guided meditation. So I'm going to stop talking and stop asking you questions, and you can just kind of take us through one of these and and I hope everyone who's watching will participate. Some people are asking to turn the comments off because they can't see you. What do you think? I don't think we can do that. So you should really be on top, and I should be where the comments are, because we need to see you more, Jeff. But why don't you go ahead and take us through it, and hopefully this will help.
Okay, now before I do though, I heard that you describe yourself as a classically bad meditator. Is that true?
Well, I have a hard time. I mean, my brain is always going, and I'm always thinking about stuff and ruminating anyway. So I have a hard time not thinking about things. And the more I'm told not to think about other things, the more I think about things.
Right. So the issue for you is that you feel like you should be stopping the thoughts, but they're not stopping.
Yes, that's true.
Right.
And of course, I don't like to do anything that I don't do well. So I have a short attention span when it comes to things that I'm not good at, which is okay. This isn't
It
my
is.
therapy session. So anyway, I
Well, I'm
think a
trying to think
lot
about
of
how I can
people,
target my meditation for you.
okay. I think a lot of people are the same way, especially
Hmm.
now. So any advice you can give us, you can turn off comments. I don't know if we can
But
do
everyone's
that.
going to be meditating.
Everyone's going to be
No
meditating.
one's
So
going to
you
see it.
guys, so don't look at the comments. Just look at Jeff and listen to his voice, because something tells me he's going to have us close our eyes.
It's an option. It's an option, but it's sort of a lot of this is about what's comfortable. So, well, the first thing I want to say, I'll guide it, but just the two things they'll say to reassure you is one, you don't need to turn off your thoughts at all. And the second is you definitely know how to do it, because the basics of meditation is basically just sitting there existing and doing nothing. And since you already exist, you're already like halfway there. So I'll try to guide it with that sensibility in mind to make it
Okay,
maximally accessible. Okay.
excellent.
All right, so now I do like to meditate with my eyes closed, but sometimes I have them open. It really has to do with whether it feels comfortable. So if it feels, having them closed makes you feel weird in any way, then just have them open and just kind of look at the ground in front of you. I should say if you're driving, although you shouldn't be looking at Instagram when you're driving, but you definitely want to,
Yeah,
want to be with
hopefully
you
no
having
one's
your eyes
doing
open.
this while they're driving, Jeff.
Yeah. There's no traffic on the road, put it that way.
Yeah,
So
really. Well,
if you're,
hopefully they're, yeah. Okay.
So eyes open if you're driving for sure, and if you're not. So I like to have them closed, and then I like to start with a few kind of deep breaths just to get myself organized. So what that's like for me is as you breathe in, you kind of stretch up the spine a little bit because you want to be alert. So you're like breathing in oxygen, stretching up, and then nice long exhale. And the exhale is sort of the downward motion. It's like the settling. And as you breathe out, you can imagine that you're breathing out any tension. So actually, when I do this, when I breathe out, I do a thing where I'll kind of soften my forehead on the out breath, and then I'll soften the cheeks and the jaw, and the hands, even the belly. Let that be soft. So you don't want to be like holding any tension or being uptight in any way. It's all about having this sort of relaxed posture.
Is
So
it
one
good to
more.
have your back against something?
Well, I mean, it's good to have a straight back. So I would say if you can have the support of a chair, that would be good. Or if you can hold yourself upright. You don't want to be all bent over and scooched up, because then it's just going to get uncomfortable. So what's most important is that you're basically comfortable. Because if you're not comfortable, then your mind will start to freak out. And we don't want that. So again, one last time. So you breathe in, you stretch up, and that's kind of the alertness, breathing in that oxygen. And then the exhale is the relaxing, breathing out, settling a little bit. And that's the balance between being alert and being relaxed.
And you
So
don't have to worry about holding your stomach in, which is a
no.
really good thing for me, since my stomach is getting really
Yeah.
big, Jeff.
Yeah, there's no beach bodies here in
Okay,
meditation.
everybody can stick your
You
stomachs out.
you want the Buddha belly. You want to just let it spill recklessly out over your belt.
Okay, that sounds like what's happening here.
That's good. So
Okay.
everything is permitted. That's the attitude. You're modeling the attitude perfectly here. The quality, I think of this as sort of meditation is kind of about these basic skills, and the most basic one is the skill of equanimity. And what that means is it's basically the skill of not being uptight. So you're going to be in an imperfect situation. There'll probably be sounds, maybe people in the room next door, or you may have indigestion, or you have body sensations and thoughts. And right from the beginning, you just go, all that is totally welcome. So you're not going to make a big deal of any of that. And that's the equanimity muscle. It's like the not, don't be uptight muscle. So just make that commitment, like no matter what happens, whether the thoughts stay busy or whether they cool out, whether the body gets uncomfortable, whether there's distractions or sound, it's all good. The core skill of meditation is the skill of just being. It's just like they say in the cliches. So can you just sit and kind of enjoy your own company? It's like you've had a long day at work or something, and now you're just kicking back on your porch or maybe on the fire escape if you're in the city, and there's nowhere else you want to be. And you're practicing that. That's meditation. So if that feels comfortable, you can just sit like that, kind of notice your own self sitting there. Or if you want to give your mind just a little thing to do, then you can get the mind to pay attention to something in your experience and kind of use it as a home base to come back to. So the classic one is the feeling, the sensation of the breath. So you might feel that a little bit tickling your nostrils, or maybe you're feeling it in your chest, or that little tautness of your non-beach body belly. As you breathe in, you feel it kind of expand a little bit. Or if you don't like the breath, you can just notice the warmth of the hands, maybe. Or you can notice sounds. Like if you got sounds around you, like the sound of a fridge or a vent or birds chirping, something like that. But the idea is that, you're just going to try to let your consciousness fill up with this other thing. So you're not going to feed so much the thinking. If it's there, it can just be in the background. But in the foreground, you're like, oh yeah, what's this breath thing? I'm going to just notice the sensation of breath and see if I can enjoy this opportunity to take a break, not have to do anything else. And notice if you're getting uptight. Because if you're getting uptight, then the meditation starts to get harder. So just maybe smile and relax and enjoy this experience of doing nothing whatsoever. So another part of meditation is being okay with how simple and undramatic it is. You're just feeling the breath or your hands, and you're just sort of appreciating the simplicity of that. You don't need it to be special effects or fireworks. I'll give you guys a little bit of silence so you can kind of sink into it a bit. Just be patient. It's a lot about being patient and enjoying the break. So if you're just tuning in, we are experiencing one of these single most boring ever live streams, and that's fine. You're into the boringness of it. We're meditating here, which involves doing nothing, just sitting with our eyes closed or maybe looking at the ground in front of you. And in a good-natured way, you're just trying to enjoy the experience of being a body in the world, in your spot in the world, and seeing if you can make it no more exotic than that. And this is actually really good for you. It's good for the nervous system to just kind of reset. You don't have to control anything or get anything right. You just sit and be. Maybe notice the feeling of the breath or sounds and kind of see if you can get into it. See if you can get into a sensation like, oh, yeah, I like breathing. I like the sound of the fridge or whatever it is. And again, you don't need to turn off the thoughts. I mean, they're going to just be there coming up and subsiding and coming up. The only thing to really be on the lookout for is when you start to get uptight and you start to think, I don't like this, or I can't do this, or something's wrong. And then you just breathe out and relax. See if you can let that go. Come back into the body. Your home. So the subtle move here is you notice if you're kind of off distracted or you're thinking in the sort of spin cycle of the thoughts, and you just sort of notice that, like, oh yeah, see if you can kind of lightly detach from that and redirect, kind of unhook from the head and redirect down into either a body sensation or a sound. And that's really the rhythm of meditation. You get distracted is normal. You realize that you come back, and every time you come back, you're kind of like a bicep curl for your attention. You're building the concentration muscle, the focus muscle. But you're doing it in this relaxed way. So if you notice yourself getting really tense, like your brow is furrowed, like you're trying to laser beam, or something, like if you've got telepathic powers, like just back off all that and just let yourself enjoy this break, sitting in company, all these people around the world. Keep it simple. Sometimes it takes a little while to get settled. Just remember, it's no different than coming home after a long day's work and just sitting on a porch or fire escape or in a chair on your lawn or leaning back against something and just seeing if you can enjoy not having to be anywhere or do anything else. And if it's hard, then you can have a sense of humor about how hard it is. There's no point in getting bent out of shape, but it's hard to stop the momentum if there's a lot of thinking and agitation. You just try to let it be there. Think of it as like a snow globe, sort of all swirling. And the longer you sit, the more you have this attitude of not needing things to be perfect, the more that will start to settle. You'll start to feel a little more relaxed, but awake too. You're not zoning out. You're kind of staying present, riding that line between relaxation and alertness. How nice it is to not have to do anything, prove anything. It's like this kind of a reset. They say in meditation, it starts out it's something you're really trying to do, kind of trying to meditate, trying to get it right. Even in meditation, we end up doing that, but it ends up being more like you're getting meditated, like you just really let go and kind of let the momentum of just sitting and being kind of unspool. And there can be a real settling that happens, or it can be a ridiculous neurotic struggle, and then that's fine too, because you're still practicing being cool with that. Let's do another minute here to wind it down. You guys are doing amazing. It's actually a long meditation, 15 minutes. The home stretch, really, truly seeing if you can do absolutely nothing. So before, if you were really with the breath or with some object and you're trying to hold on to it, some home base, just let that go now. And just sit and relax and know that you're almost done. You don't need to do anything. Just coast. And that's our meditation. If I had a bell, I'd ring it. I don't. So you get an audio stop.
Do you try to kind of stop gradually, or when people are done, do they usually have a chime or something, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, there's usually a bell, so it's more. I should have brought mine, I forgot. But just ring a bell, but a kind of nice one. It just sort of fades. The sound fades off, and it brings people back. And sometimes people feel like relaxed after, like they don't much feel like chatting. And other times when I lead groups, people share reports about what the experience was. I mean, that was pretty short. I actually have no idea how long that was. I didn't bring a timer, so my guess was it was somewhere around 15 minutes.
It
Um,
was. And can you tell people how this, you talk about how it's good for your nervous system. I think one of the interesting things is the physiological things that happen with your brain and your sort of not your brain chemistry, but also your body in general in terms of the chemical changes that can result from meditation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not an expert in the brain science of it, although I have a chapter in my book, Head Trip. But what you find out when you talk to neuroscientists is there's no agreement about it. There's so many different kinds of findings. But one of the brain findings is around this quieting of what's called the default mode network, which is a sort of the endless ruminative story of me. You know, the kind of part of you that never quite is always wondering, you know, is my hair look shiny in this light? What am I gonna do later? You know, people like me, you know, like, oh my God, whatever, all the stories we always got going on. So they do find from the research that that kind of starts to cool out, and the part of the so it's less narrative self, more just the kind of embodied self, more the part of you that stays is more the part or the sensory self that feels the wind on your face or feels the body. And so there's this shifting of the guard there, and there's probably some neurochemical underlying that. Generally, I mean, when you get more relaxed, the stress hormones start to those levels start to taper off. So you can really feel it happening too. And actually, when you get more sensitive meditation, you can feel all these subtleties in your experience. Like I can feel when there's a loud sound, and all of a sudden I can feel like this, almost like a kind of alertness chemical kind of surge through me, or adrenaline. So you get more sensitive to the little variations of what's going on. But I mean, I think the most practical way to put it is just, you know, a busy mind creates an activated body. So you're always in this sort of activated go-go mode. And the practice of meditation is the practice of really trying to rest both. But to do it while still being in a place of awareness. So you can learn how to kind of reset and come to this more settled place, as opposed to always responding to life from a place of high activation. Because then you're just always in a sort of more escalating mode, you know. You don't really, you just, things keep, you know, the drama keeps going. Whereas the practice is kind of teaching you how to just let the drama go for even just a few minutes. So then you can kind of reset and get centered, and then you're much more present and available for what's happening. The other thing
Yeah.
it shows you is how much we cover over what's happening with our own ideas of what we want to say, our own kind of fixations, our own expectations of how something's going to go. It's like that overlays a whole situation, and you can't actually see and respond to the situation in the same clear way. You're kind of in your own head about it. So meditation is kind of like it lets things settle a bit, so you can see, oh, Katie wants to say something, as opposed to like I want to just go on here with my monologue.
No, I mean, and how often do you meditate? Do you meditate for a certain amount of time in the morning and at night, or how often do you do it?
When I first started, I was quite passionate about it. So I went to tons of retreats, and I would meditate a lot. Even off retreat, I'd be meditating, you know, try to meditate like an hour and a half a day. And then on retreat, of course, you're meditating like 10 hours a day. I couldn't get enough of it. Nowadays, it looks pretty different. I only do maybe a half hour formal practice at night, where I'll just sit and just do a kind of more a true formal practice. But what I've found is that I'm kind of doing it all day long. Like I'm doing it right now, and I'll see that I start to get excited, and I know how to kind of back off the energy and be more settled. You kind of learn where the adjustment dials are in your consciousness in a way. And so I know how to turn down the agitation, and just, it's sort of like but I'm kind of constantly monitoring, you know, what's going on, and can I be in a more available, relaxed state with things. So that it becomes an all the time thing, you know, although there's always some intensity that throws you out of it. And then you're like a basket case, and then you kind of come back to center. But you learn, that's what happens in meditation. You do it on the cushion at first, and eventually it just spills out. And then you start to notice how to kind of find the qualities that it builds all the time. Yeah.
And some people said, how do you avoid? People thought I was sleeping. I wasn't. I was breathing and I was listening to the lawnmower outside and I
Mm.
was feeling my hands and noticing my breath. But
Mm.
if people watching want to do this some more and they feel like this would be helpful, what would you recommend? And somebody said, can you do it lying down? I don't think that's a good idea, right? Because then you will fall asleep.
Yeah, well, only for that reason. You know, for some people who have chronic pain, I might work with people who can't, they have to lie down. And if you can lie down and stay alert, then it's no problem. Just don't fool yourself. A lot of people like the idea of meditating while lying down, and they're just in this sort of drooly half sleep, you know, and that's not really meditating. I mean, the whole thing about meditating is that you're practicing being both alert and relaxed. So you're awake and present to what's going on, but you don't need things to be different. And that's what's so massively empowering about it. All the time we need something to be different. Oh, I need to do this, or I need to do that, or I need to control my experience in this way, or I can't sit here, I can't do this. We've always got these conditions about how we need to be. So the practice of meditation is actually this practice of radical freedom of like, actually, I can connect to what's underneath all that, and I can find a place where I'm actually fine with my own company. I don't need to compulsively fill it with distraction or whatever I need to get by. No judgment about it because we all have that, but that's the practice. So there is a sense in which you start to feel like more and more autonomy. You can kind of choose, you know, how you want to be, and it's very empowering.
So you would say, is it helpful? I guess apps are some helpful are helpful. You work for
Hmm.
Calm, but you don't necessarily need an app, but it can be helpful if you have one to kind of, I don't know, to get your head
Yeah,
in the right place.
yeah, it's sort of like the guided meditations are a nice little structure. So you can find free guided meditations on YouTube or whatever. I mean, there's varying degrees of quality and random weirdness, but basically, I think the apps are good. I do work for Calm and and for 10% Happier too. And I think I'm on Insight Timer, which is free. And there's lots of different there's different apps out there. Calm is great, and they have these, and they're bite-sized chunks, you know. So you can do a 5 or 10 minute meditation, and you don't have to think about what you're going to do. You've got somebody kind of holding the container. I mean, I have a course on Calm called How to Meditate, which people really like because my thing is to try to teach people how it works, and then you can be your own teacher. So you can choose to use the apps if you like, and it's still nice to have that structure. But once you understand the skills that get built in practice, then you don't really need it. You know, you can just sit. That means you can sit anytime. But it is good at the beginning. It's sort of like just the training wheels, you know. And actually, I still use it. I'll still listen to a guided meditation on Calm just because I want that structure, and I don't have to think about it. And then it's like, oh yeah, okay, this person's got my back. They're going to tell me, give me the reminders, you know.
Someone's saying your course is awesome on Calm, so you have some
Hmm.
big believers on that. And I know that that some of the services on Calm are free right now, which is
Yeah.
something that people should be aware of. And someone said you're a huge part of their practice. And they've also, someone said, I'm sad. And I think a lot of people are feeling really fragile
Hmm.
right now, Jeff.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Morin, by the way. If you all are just joining us, he's a meditation instructor and journalist and a writer as well. So I know you have a course. And, you know, what would you say to people who are feeling so agitated right now? I mean, this is going to solve everyone's problems, but it will give you some sort of peace, at least temporarily, that can spill into other aspects of your life that maybe will help you. Jeff's last name is Warren, someone just asked, that will help you kind of be less, what's the word when you're too responsive and you have
Reactive.
short, thank you, less reactive and a little more, I guess, centered and a little less on edge, right?
Yeah, it can definitely help with those things. I mean, the main thing it does at first is it gives you an option to not feed your thinking. So feeding your anxieties, feeding your worries about things, you can kind of whip yourself into a frenzy, especially if you're watching the news a lot or following the news a lot. And it is important to follow what's going on, but it's nice to have an option to not be in that spin cycle. So the practice gives you an opportunity to kind of settle and get a little centered. And it can be challenging when people are really anxious, when there's a lot of energy in the body or anxiousness. I often, if I'm feeling like that, I sometimes like to go first or do a physical activity. Kind of there's too much energy, like too much agitation. But it does work, and what you just got to kind of do the experiment. Different practices work for different people. So some people working on a breath with a long exhale, it really works for them. Some people doing a slow moving meditation. Some people doing like a just sitting and being one. And I should say also compassion practices, because we are all feeling, very tender, and we're worried about our loved ones, or we're dealing with things ourselves, like having a lot of like not being mad at yourself for that, not being down on yourself for that, but kind of having this space of understanding, and like, I'm having a hard time just like everybody else. Welcome to the club. And that attitude of like, noticing that you're having a hard time, and being kind to yourself is huge. It may be one of the greatest things that meditation, in addition to the space, it gives us that too. If you practice a bit, and it's a beautiful thing. You kind of give yourself a little bit of caring that everybody needs.
And I think we all have such high expectations of ourselves. It's nice to not kind of be demanding of yourself for a
Oh, that's
period of
definitely true.
time, and just to be, and not be thinking about what you should be doing or should be doing better or differently. So
Yeah.
hopefully
Well,
this, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, there's a very familiar stage in meditation when you're doing it a lot, where you go into a period of things kind of falling apart, where you don't really, there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't really feel like as confident as you once did, and it's sort of like it's a very important stage, because you learn how to, in that coming apart, you learn how to be okay in that intensity, and then you come back with a more a stronger, clear idea of what's important to you in your life. And in a sense, we're being forced into this as an entire civilization. So to see it as this period of, as things are kind of coming apart, they're going to reorganize in a different way, and to have a kind of idea of what you want to be caught by on the other side, what kind of world you want to be caught by, what kind of qualities in your own mind and heart you want to be caught by. This is an opportunity to take a moment and check in with that. And that's rare in modern life. So I'd say, I'm just trying to put a little bit, I mean, of course, there's so much challenge and heavy stuff going on, but that is, you could say, a kind of silver lining of what's happening.
Well, we're going to put some of the key points that you've talked about in the newsletter tomorrow, which is Wake Up Call. So if you all want to subscribe to that, you can just go to katiecouric.com. And I'll try to save this, because a lot of people have asked me about if they could refer to this again. So thank you for doing this for everyone. I hope it was helpful. Some people have asked, is there a best time to meditate, or is it just really the best time for you? And can you do it once a day? I know that you sort of do it at different times. You said a half hour at night, but is it good to try to do it twice a day if you can, or are just no demands?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what works for you. You're just sitting and being. You can do it anytime. Some people really like it at the beginning of the day, because it kind of sets them up with, like, they find that composure, that little bit of space around things, and then they're able to kind of keep in touch with that through the day. Other people like it at the end of the day, because it can help kind of bring things down, and it helps you sleep a little easier. Some people like to do it at lunch, like fit it in where you can. I would say start small, like take manageable chunks, like start with a 5 or 10 or 15-minute practice, and just see how you like it. You can experiment a bit with different objects, meaning like paying attention to the breath or sounds, or just sitting and being. And you kind of find, like, that's my thing. I like to teach customizing practice, like finding a practice that works for you. There's almost nobody I've ever met that can't meditate if they find the right thing to pay attention to, or the right kind of wording to get them into it. So I would say just try it and make it simple. And I have a thing I do called the Do Nothing Project on Wednesdays and Sunday nights. It's just this free live thing on YouTube. I try to make it easy. You can do that. But there's tons of other free stuff out there. And
What
like you
time
said,
do
the
you do
apps.
that on Wednesday and Sundays?
I do it Wednesday at noon, and I do it Sunday at 8 p.m. That's Eastern time. And like people join from all around. We hang out. I'm like, all right, well, we're not going to do anything now. And then we just do nothing for 25 minutes. And people like it. And those who don't leave, because it's the most boring audiovisual experience of their life.
And
Yeah.
someone just asked about a mantra. Is it
Mhm.
helpful to have a mantra in this situation? And one of the things, just parenthetically, I wanted to point out that people spend very little time in this day and age doing nothing because their default position is going to their phone
Exactly.
or, grabbing something. And the idea of daydreaming is actually really healthy to do nothing, because that's when the part of your brain responsible for creative thinking actually
Exactly.
fires up. And that's why you have more creative thoughts when you're in the shower, or when you're taking a long walk and you're not distracted by other things. So I think that's something really important to remember for people who are listening.
Yeah, that's one of the things you notice from meditating is you get all these creative thoughts that start to bubble up because you're not in that kind of ruminative loop, which doesn't make any space for new things because you're going around and around. But when you start to make space between the thoughts, then guess what starts to bubble up from in between? The just sort of like spontaneity and creativity. And so there is this wonderful sense in which it feels like it's freeing up ideas. Although you don't necessarily want to be sitting and meditating and just ruminating about your creative ideas, because you want to just let yourself enjoy the experience of having some space, and they'll be there to catch you when you come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what was the other question you had? You had another question
Oh,
before
oh,
that, though, about
someone asked about a mantra. Is it helpful to
mantras.
have a mantra?
Yeah, for some people it is. So again, a mantra is just a different thing to pay attention to. It's just another home base. So for some people, find that the mantra kind of it sucks up some of the bandwidth of the thinking mind because you're using the thinking mind to repeat a phrase like "I am" or may all beings be happy, or may chipmunks frolic through the forest, whatever your mantra is. So you do it again and again, and it kind of sucks up some of that thinking. So some people do really like it, but so again, that's another thing you can just sort of play with a little bit, like what naturally works for you. I think a lot of people think, oh, I gotta be on my breath, and that's it, and then they pay attention to their breath, and it kind of psychs them out, and they feel like they don't know how to breathe anymore, and then they say, oh, this meditation's not for me. It's like, no, 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 no. Just try a few different things before you give up, because it is very good for you.
And last question, but I just want to be responsive to people who are watching. What's the difference between meditation and transcendental meditation?
Well, TM or transcendental meditation is a kind of meditation. So it's a meditation that works with a mantra. So your teacher within that tradition would give you a particular mantra, and that's what you're repeating. So anyone who's going to claim that you're going to get a completely different kind of transformation via this technique versus that technique, it's just not true. They all kind of build the same skills, and they move you in a similar direction. There is different flavorings of stuff. Like if you're doing a certain kind of concentration practice, it tends to lead to a certain kind of tranquility, and versus a more mindfulness where you're really trying to notice what's going on. But overall, they're all taking you in the same direction. So that's why it's good to experiment and see what works for you. And so TM works for lots of people.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who practice that. Well, Jeff Warren, thank you for helping us, and I hope that this was valuable for people watching and that they
Hmm.
at least got a taste of it or learned something from this experience. So all I can say is namaste, Jeff Warren.
Nice, Katie Couric. I don't really namaste too often, but I'll do it for you.
Oh, really? You don't?
Yeah, no, I like the bow. I guess I like the bow. I do the humanities bow, like bringing in,
And by the
making
way,
it
I think I don't
ecumenical.
I think handshaking is going to be a thing of the past. I think probably we'll all start doing that when we say hello, don't you?
I think we'll probably see more of that. It makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
Anyway, all right. Thank you, Jeff. And
Thank you.
again, we'll have the tips from Jeff tomorrow morning in Wake Up Call, and we'll have a link to this conversation as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Jeff. Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
joining us. Bye.